Hello sim racers, today we're going to be taking a look at the classic rFactor 2. This is going to be a PC only review because as far as I'm aware this is not available on console. I call this a classic because it was initially put up for full release in 2013 and has a great reputation for the way it represents its tire model and the accuracy of that. In addition, it's also used for driver training and inserted into a number of different programs. And with the recent uptick and surge in interest in sim racing, there has been a number of events hosted by the race, which have included drivers such as Jenson Button, Fernando Alonso, Emerson Fittipaldi, just to name a few, who've raced online for our entertainment. So let's start at the beginning. Upon installing rFactor 2, the first thing that strikes you is the installation screens. It literally looks like something from the mid-90s, something that you'd have probably found on an old Atari or Amiga. It's disgraceful, to be honest with you, the way how it looks. It's just ancient. Once it's actually installed, the interface itself is functional and there are a number of launcher options, and essentially that's how you control going to whichever part of the sim that you choose to do. The options here are news, content, settings, which include your graphic options, which are pretty basic. There's multiplayer, which allows you to connect to servers, and single player, which leads you to this main menu interface that I was referring to. There's also a developer mode, which I presume is for people who would be modding and creating cars and tracks. And there's an MAS utility, a mass utility. I have no idea what that's about. The content settings option in the launcher allows for you to see the tracks and cars. So initially when the game comes, it has a set amount of tracks and cars, but you can add to this through the Steam Workshop with lots of additional created content, including DLC. I don't have very much by way of DLC, with the exception of the Formula E Gen 2 car, because I really wanted to check that out and see how that went. As of yet, I have not purchased any of the additional content, which includes tracks like Nordschleife, it includes a 488 GTE or GT3 Ferrari, and a bunch of other cars and tracks. When including the amount of content that's available via the Steam Workshop, and that's even without including the paid DLC, there is a vast selection of cars and tracks available to rFactor 2 users. I must say that when you do actually start to delve into some of the options that are available for rFactor 2, the setup of the interface and the feel of it are made to feel incredibly overwhelming due to the large array of options, and it does take some time to become accustomed to selecting what you want and finding where you want to go. And at this point I'm still working through everything and learning as I'm going. In single player, you can set the artificial intelligence from anything from 70 to 120% in strength, from 0 to 100% in aggression, and there is also something known as the limiter feature, which is from 0 to 100%, and what that does, it sorts out how close the cars stick together while they're racing. So at 0% limiter, the vehicles will be most spread out, and at 100% it keeps the field very close together. You can set races to race for time or for a number of laps. There are also weather options, which can help to change temperatures and racing conditions. There's also time scales, so you can have, I guess, 24-hour races over a period of an hour, I suppose. And there is also a real road feature, which helps the track to ramp up. The more that you drive and lay down rubber, the more the track gets quicker and responds to that. There's options around setting flags and rules, so you can have like black flag only or the full set of flags and rules. You can set for fuel, whether you want to be invincible or if you want full damage on your vehicle, and you can set the amount of opponents and what type of opponents that you want to be able to race against. It's important to note that for single player mode, there is practice, qualifying and race. There is no hot lap modes, and I wasn't unable to find any type of leaderboards of any kind. So that competitive edge that you can artificially create with a lot of other sims, or the fact that you can test yourself against other drivers' times, isn't something that's easily done in rFactor 2. This is by far the most important part of the review, and the part that I really wanted to get to: the driving. Once you get rolling, even before the car's warmed up, there's a distinctly different feel about the way you, the virtual car, and the track interact. There's a connection present that builds an almost instant comfort. Me personally, I like F1 and I'm definitely partial to open wheel cars and sims. So for this, I chose the Tattoos as my starter vehicle for practice. I can only describe my initial experience as this. I was so comfortable in the car, I was able to complete 10 laps at Silverstone before I even realized what was going on. The car felt fantastic, it was glued to the road. There was a massive difference between what you usually feel in sims versus what it was given back here. Now, I've recently reviewed ACC and that video is somewhere here on the channel, and I referred to the connection to the vehicle and the road in that. But rFactor 2 just has some additional things that it adds to that, which creates yet another level of feeling. That's probably the best way that I could describe it. In those first 10 laps, I managed not to make any serious mistakes considering that I was brand new to the sim. And usually on your first lap, you're going to make a mistake, or definitely by the time you're able to get up to speed in most sims. But for some reason, I didn't even come off the road. And later on, the more cars that I drove and the more that I got into the sim, at any point if I did find myself spinning off or heading into a wall backwards, it was always because it was something that I did. I knew exactly what it was that I did that pushed the car over the limit at that point. Because you can normally catch slides. The feedback is so responsive in this, you can usually figure out when you're going to go wrong. You can actually correct and save yourself a lot of time because this allows you that direct feeling. And a lot of other sims, sometimes you make a mistake, it's very difficult to recover. This definitely allows for that. So when you push beyond those limits and end up crashing, it's usually your fault. So for all those people who are talking about tire models, if this is what they really meant by it, then I'm in total agreement that yes, rFactor 2 has a way of representing a tire model that no other sim has done for me so far. As with most sims, you have the ability to change your driving camera. So I believe that there's a swing camera, a TV camera, a cockpit camera, and I think there's a nose camera that's available. It's the same for all the cars basically. You can also change your view heights and positions and all the usual things that come along with it. Again, as I mentioned previously, there's a wealth of options as to be able to customize this to yourself. And unfortunately, there's nothing that really sort of explains this to you or gives you a helping hand. You sort of have to look online to try and find references and videos that other people have gone through these different setups that you may be looking for, etc., to kind of get yourself some help. It really is just a sim. Like, there's no gamey aspects to this. There's no holding your hand to try and make anything nice for you. So we have excellent driving, but a wealth of options to customize everything the way that you want. It's just not very well explained to you. Graphically for rFactor 2, the car models are pretty decent. It does lack the shine of the other sims in some kind of ways and games. It doesn't look anywhere near as good as Assetto Corsa or ACC. Definitely not as good as sort of the F1 games from Codemasters, and even Project Cars 2 probably looks nicer than this, to be honest with you. Some of these tracks here, definitely the mod tracks, are not laser scanned. There are some tracks like Zandvoort, which is highlighted quite a lot in this video. That's an absolute gem of a track and does appear to be laser scanned, I think, because it shows the different elevation and banking. So there's aspects of this sim that are absolutely phenomenal, but there's also some things that are very unusual to get to grips with if you're not used to dealing with this. So obviously the graphics apply to both the single player and the multiplayer situation. What I can say with regards to single player, you have a choice of how many AI you want to have in the race with you. So you have one, I believe, all the way up until 20 or 30 something AI. I guess that depends on what your system can handle. I should talk about the single player AI very quickly, just to say that depending on the strength that you put the AI, obviously depends on how well they're going to race. I did tend to notice that on the mod tracks, the AI did not perform quite as well as it did on the standard tracks that came with the game. So there's actually a difference in performance there, and it's probably worth adjusting the aggression settings, because sometimes they really do dive bomb you from miles back and will just ram you off if your aggression settings are too high. But as a user, you do have the ability to adjust those. Another very important thing to note about the single player, again, as I've mentioned previously, this is really a sim far more than it is a game. So there's no fanfare, there's no celebration when you win the race. You basically win the race and you can start again or leave the track. There's no podium, there's no then it doesn't tell you anything. You just win the race. That's literally it, which is really basic. And I mean, we've come to obviously expect more from our sims and our games, but it also does have to be taken into account that this is from back in 2013. Having said that, our taste for winning celebrations have existed long before 2013. So I mean, maybe Studio 397 could have made a bit of an effort in that regard. Really, the only thing left to talk about now is the multiplayer. And to be honest, so far my experience with that has been a bit wishy-washy, in the sense that there's not very many people online, unfortunately, looking to play this, and it does seem that the best way to be able to have a multiplayer experience in rFactor 2 is to join leagues, because they would obviously have scheduled times that you would join servers, which I presume would be full at the time for league races. But just looking for a random race throughout the day, there's not very many people online. When I went through my initial numbers, what I found was the largest server that I could find was the Honda Simulator Online, and that had 104 spaces on it, but it wasn't very busy. And the busiest server was the JB7 Racing server, and that had 40 players online, but apparently could only have 23 spaces, so I'm not quite sure how that works out. But again, it just wasn't very busy, so probably stick to league racing if you're intending to play multiplayer on this. In conclusion, I'd like to say this about rFactor 2. If you are a sim racing enthusiast and you enjoy being able to use a wide range of vehicles, a wide range of tracks, if you are intent on experiencing one of the closest real life experiences that you could get in a sim, I would definitely recommend rFactor 2 for you. Again, as I've reiterated previously, there's no hand holding, it doesn't give you a very gamey experience, it is just a pure and raw sim. It's more like a piece of software than a game, but the experience that you get from it in terms of the feel of the driving, how the car responds to you, etc., is something definitely worth giving a shot. And I believe I paid $36 Canadian at the time to be able to get it. I'm not sure what that is for everyone else, but definitely well worth getting this title to add to your sim racing collection. Thanks for watching.